So then the question becomes, how do we handle this? What do we do with this? Where do we go? So we're going to present the syntax for exception handling, and it's going to seem like a lot. So we will incrementally walk through it, and hopefully it'll begin to make a little more sense. Every language that has exception handling has some sort of structure like this. Usually it's called a try. I've never seen anything that isn't called a try statement. The except statements are sometimes catches. You'll hear me call it a catch sometimes. That's what Java, that's what C# does. But regardless, you have a block of code at the beginning that tries to do something. So we're going to try to do something. We're going to try to take input from the user, right? Give me a number. And we're going to cast it as an int. Okay. And we're going to print out 100 divided by whatever that number is. Okay. Now, the idea is you put into your try statement code that you anticipate could cause an issue. So we are automatically anticipating that this is going to cause an issue with divide by zero. And I forget what the divide by zero error is. So we're just going to try to catch an exception, right? We'll say except, and we'll say empty stack exception. Okay, and we'll show you what happens here. And we'll print, hey, the stack apparently was empty. And we'll run that and it'll say, give me a number, and I'll put 0 in. And it'll be a zero division error. Okay, so that's good. So now we have that. Okay. So what did this do? This did nothing for us. Well, not really, right? We did this, and the very first thing it tried to do was an empty stack exception. Now, we don't have an empty stack. We don't have a stack there at all. So this is kind of a pointless statement. But let's just pretend that we did. Okay. What we can then do, you notice here that, hey, we don't need to specify the type. We don't need to specify a name, but we could. And we don't need to specify a second one, but we could. We could specify 0 or more additional. We need at least one, but we could specify more. So let's specify more. We'll accept a, oh, nope, that's not what I want. Let's try that again. Don't know why it didn't grab the there we go. Let's try that. Zero division zero division error as a ZDE. And we can just print ZDE. And now what's going to happen is same thing as before. We'll put a 0 in, right? It'll say, hey, is this an empty stack exception? No. Is it a zero division error? Oh, yeah, it is. And it'll print zero division error. Cool. Is this the only kind of error that we could have? No. We could also have something where we put something in that can't be cast as an int. Okay. So let's say we don't want to specify the type of exception. We want to capture everything. That's this else statement, correct? No, that else statement's something else. If we want to just capture everything, we just say except. Okay. And we'll say except, and we'll say, hey, print something else happened. And you'll see this becomes our catch-all. We try to do that. It breaks at the end. It goes, is it an empty stack exception? No. Is it a zero division error? No. It's something else. Crap. This is what I was saying earlier when I said you don't want to just put anything and capture everything, right? This is not a great thing to do. But sometimes it's useful, especially if you want to log the errors and then re-raise it. There's nothing wrong with saying this and then go raise exception, whatever the exception was, you know. I wonder if we can say, worst case scenario, you can say exception, right? This is the superclass as E, and then we can just go raise E. And that does a catch-all too. And you can see, hey, now we got a value error. Look at that. So we could error log our issue and then raise our error again, pass it on down. That way we don't crash out. So what's that else do? This is one of those this is one of the things in exception handling in Python that I love. This is actually something in Python that I love. And this is what you do if everything executes fine. Hey, I've done this, and there was no exception, so we can skip all the exception handling, and we can go to this else. And there are ways to do this in other languages, but I like how this explicitly separates it out and says, hey, nothing bad happened. This is the code that you can run. And imagine that we had to do this calculation and then we wanted to write this out to a file. That would be a great way to do it. Hey, we're only going to write it out to the file if we know that the data is good. And then finally, we have our finally statement. And this happens no matter what. So we can say, give me a number 1. Hey, it happened. Give me a number C. Hey, oh, I raised the error, right? I raised the exception. So that happens no matter, this happens no matter what, and then the exception gets thrown. So yeah, this happens no matter what. Hey, I'm going to put in 0. Hey, it happens no matter what. Finally happens regardless. If you catch it, if you don't have anything, finally always happens. This is great to do if you have something, if you're dealing with files or database connections or things like that. You can just do file.close here, guarantee that it closes. And then you can just do a generic accept and pass. And this is okay. Because what this says is, hey, try to close my file. If my file's open, it'll close. If it's not open, it'll throw an exception, but I'm going to catch it and okay, it's closed. That's what I want. If it doesn't even exist, it still works. If it doesn't exist, it's going to, and you can see that this actually threw an error. File doesn't exist, so we get a name error. And it just goes, cool, well, it's closed. It never actually existed, so I'm not going to worry about it. This is real common for closing files or closing connections to databases. So this is the full form. 90% of the time, 90+% of the time, your exception handling is going to look like this. I'm sorry, like this, or maybe like this, right? 1 or 2 exceptions tops. This is not something that I'm going to need you to do in this class pretty much ever, but I want you to understand how we handle it. And you're going to see the code occasionally, so I wanted you to know what this does. Okay, the thing that we're going to do occasionally is we're going to occasionally raise an exception. This is things that you'll see more as you go further in your education, specifically in the software engineering side of the house. So CISC 225, which is system analysis and design, maybe CISC 301, which is operating systems. Definitely if you take 349, which is mobile application development, or 397, which is basically our introduction to software engineering. These are all classes where you will see exception handling far more often.